Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well out there. And today it's another week and we have another horror movie to drop this weekend and we're going to talk about it in a second. But before we get into it, do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here. I greatly would appreciate that. Also, shameless plug for my TeePublic and my Zazzle page. I'll have a link for both those pages in the description box below. And today we're going to talk about the brand new Nicolas Cage film, LongLegs. Now this movie just dropped on Friday. There's been a lot of hype for it. Some people saying it's the scariest movie of all time. We will address that as we go through this review. But me and my buddy Dale _ from the Bat and Spider podcast, by the way, Chuck and Dale are awesome. Do me a favor, go over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe to their podcast. Send those guys some love. Tell them I sent you. Those guys are great, and they release an episode every Thursday morning. So this movie has been described as Silence of the Lambs or Seven, in that nature, like a 90s serial killer horror film. And Nicolas Cage being a serial killer, LongLegs, and okay, sign me up. I want to see that all day, every day. Micah Monroe's in the film. Alicia Witt's in the film as well as her mother. The cast is really great here. And Osgood Perkins directed this film. He's the son of the late, great Anthony Perkins. And he was an actor as well. He showed up in different films. And this is like his third or fourth theatrical film. I haven't seen any of his other ones. I might seek them out now that because the visual style here I really enjoyed. I loved the way this movie was directed. It's very deliberate. The shots are they hang on very long. This is not a quick cut type of movie. And I really appreciated that. And it's set in the 90s, although they don't do what a lot of films do. They don't like throw up a 90s title card or anything to tell you where we're at. The only little subtle hints, there's little subtle hints to tell you what time period we're in. And the main one is in the head of the FBI office's, his office is a picture of Bill Clinton as commander-in-chief behind his desk, which tells you this takes place in the 90s. But they don't dwell on that, really. But there's a serial killer on the loose called LongLegs that have been operating since the 70s. And the FBI they don't know who this guy is. They don't know what he looks like. They've never been able to find him, or, they can't even prove if he was in the house when these families, like the fathers, they figured out that the fathers of the families, there's a birthday involved, and the fathers end up killing their whole family and then killing themselves. And somehow LongLegs has been responsible for all this. So that is basically the mystery. Now, when Monroe's character is brought onto the case, things start shaking loose. And at a rapid pace, even her boss is like, played by Blair Underwood, who's great here as well, is like, this case has been dead for so long, but you come on it and all of a sudden we're making headway left, right, and center. And there's a reason for that. I'm not going to give away too many spoilers because this movie just dropped. And then we get our finale, we get our reveal of what's really going on. And we get, Monroe's character, we get hints that she is psychic, or she has psychic abilities. Like, she can see things other people can't see or figure out. We see this when she's going out on a house-to-house. They're looking for this guy, and she tells the agent that's with her that the guy they're looking for is in the house across the street. He doesn't believe her. He goes up to the door and he gets shot in the head for his troubles. But she knew the guy was there. A great interrogation scene with Monroe's character and Nicolas Cage's LongLegs. And Cage here is great, but there's a caveat to that. We'll get to that. When we get to the negatives, we'll talk about that. I think Cage is creepy and unhinged here, and only, when you hear Nicolas Cage being a serial killer, you can't help but want to see that movie because Cage is one of our gifts to cinema. I don't care what you say, that man is a gift to cinema. I love his performances most of the time, and here I do love his performance, but I do have a few issues with it, and we'll get on to that. We'll get into that then. And then basically at the end, LongLegs kills himself during this interrogation scene, and the truth really comes out about Monroe's character's youth, like her youth, her mother, and we get our big reveal, and we take a hard left hook into real supernatural satanic territory, and then the movie ends. And you're going to be left with a lot of questions if you go into this movie at the end of the film. What to like about this film? Well, the cast is great. Nicolas Cage is great here. Everybody else is great across the board, doing what they're doing. I love the way the film looks. I believe it was shot in 35 millimeter, and you can tell if it looks like a film. It looks like a film from the time period of the 90s. And I love, like, when we go to flashbacks, the way goes to the square aspect ratio. I love that aspect ratio jump. I was there for it. The color palette, a lot of reds are used in this film at certain scenes. And I love the satanic angle. I didn't know how far they were going to push it. And in the last 20 minutes, oh, they push it. They push it further than I thought they were going to. I thought, the mystery behind Longlegs was intriguing and all that stuff. This movie isn't overly violent, but it's a very dark and bleak movie, honestly. And there's not much comedic relief. There's maybe one or two spots where you can chuckle, but the rest of the time, this is a dead serious movie, and there's not much levity here. So it's a very dark, depressing kind of film. And the ending is not what you would call a typical Hollywood happy ending, which I like dour endings. John Carpenter's the master of them, and this is definitely not a happy ending per se. It might seem like that in the surface, but if you're paying attention to what was said before the ending happens, it's not really a happy ending. But overall, I did enjoy this film. Now, let's get on to the negatives, and then we'll get into the hype for this film, which is definitely a detriment to this film, I feel. But the negatives are, it's only an hour and 40-some minutes long, this movie. And I don't mind movies that take their time. This movie is very deliberate, and it takes its time. It's a slow burn. This movie does not move quick at all. It moves at its own pace. And then in the last 20 minutes, it's like a freight train right to the end. Once the reveal happens of what's actually going on, why it's going on, it's just a race to the finish line. And a lot of stuff gets thrown at you. And it comes out of nowhere, which I am fine with. I don't mind a movie taking a sharp left turn. I don't mind that at all. And this movie does that. And it's going to depend on your expectations if you're going to go on board with it. Because in the advertising of this film, and I only ever saw one trailer, and I've tried to stay away from the hype, but it's hard to miss it because it's all over Twitter, especially if you're following other horror sites or want to see early reviews pop up. And they're all scariest movie in a decade and most disturbing film in God knows how long. In my opinion, that's not true. This movie is not the most disturbing movie I've ever seen. It's not the scariest movie I've ever seen or even close to it in the last 10 years. I don't know what that movie is, but it's certainly not this one. There is creepy moments, and the atmosphere of the movie is very oppressive and dour and depressing and dark. But everybody's subjective. Again, film is subjective. What I don't think is scary, somebody else might. But the hype for this thing has been overblown, and I think it does a disservice to the movie, but we're still talking about the negatives. Let's talk about Nicolas Cage. His performance is genuinely creepy and unnerving, but there are moments in his performance, and you'll know it if you're a Nicolas Cage fan, you'll know it when these couple moments appear, rear their ugly heads. Cage is a great actor. I think he's one of our best actors ever, honestly. He's given us some wonderful performances, and he's given us some great unhinged performances. When he's being more low-key with Longlegs, he's genuinely creepy and disturbing, and his look is very disturbing as well. But there are moments when he goes big, and those cageisms sneak in there, and it takes you out of the performance. He needed to be dialed back a little bit in those moments. There should have been a reshoot, and it should have been like, okay, Nick, you dialed it up to 15, let's dial it down to 8 and take it back a bit, because you can see him overindulging on his tendencies in other films. And there's a moment specifically where he makes this comment, I don't remember verbatim what it was, but when he said it the way he said it, the first character I thought of was Castor Troy from Face Off. He just went there for just a couple seconds, and then he dialed it back in. But to me, that took me out of that character. Like, I found him disturbing, creepy, but in those little moments where Cage dialed it up through the roof, it took me out of the character. And I think that was an issue, definitely, for sure. I think he's great here, except for those moments. And it takes you out of the character for a moment. And you almost want to laugh at him because you know that's Cage just improvising and just taking it to a place where it probably wasn't meant to in the script or in the tone of the film. Like, it's totally out of bounds of what the tone of the film is. For some people, it might work. For me, as soon as he did it, I'm like, oh my God, man, you should have dialed it back a little bit. You went way too high, went over the top on that one. Maika Monroe's character, I actually, at first, I was annoyed by the way she was acting. She's very reserved, put off. Thinking back on the movie now and the way the movie ended, I understand why she was like that. I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to spoil this movie if you haven't seen it. Again, it's only been out for 3 or 4 days. But she does give a great performance. I think she's really good here after I realized what was actually going on, why she was the way she was. And Alicia Witt is great here as her mother. But I think the movie leaves you with a lot of questions. And this is definitely a movie I'm going to have to see another 2 or 3 times to probably see how I feel about it. Because when I left the theater, me and Dale had a long discussion about it, our likes, our dislikes for it. And we were pretty much in agreement on a lot of things. I think, the satanic angle, I dig it. I've been doing a lot of satanic angle movies lately, panic movies, cult movies lately, and I'm going to do some more. Yeah, I can really see the last 20 minutes throwing people for a loop because this is being sold as like Silence of the Lambs or Seven. And while it's that for a little portion of the film, when the last act kicks in, it's going to surprise some people if they were going and expecting a Seven or a Silence of the Lambs because, as I said, this does have supernatural elements and it does lean in, like throughout the film it sets up that he's a satanic killer, and in the last act it really goes hard on that, and the resolution is all tied to that, and there's supernatural elements involved, and depending on what you're expecting when you go in is really going to determine if this works for you or not. Actually, for me, the last 20 minutes saved this movie from being like a 5 out of 10 to bumping the score up a little bit because I was interested in the movie. The first part I was really interested in, and then the middle part starts dragging. It's very deliberate, and I don't mind movies like that. I mean, I have a good attention span. I don't mind movies that take their time. But sometimes it just got like it was just plodding along, okay? And then you get the last 20 minutes, which goes batshit crazy, and it ties up. And I liked the last 20 minutes, which saved it from me giving this a really negative score. But it's all going to depend on what your expectations are going in. And film is subjective, so some people might find this extremely disturbing and extremely scary. While some of the movie was very creepy and definitely it was intense, I never felt like I've seen things that were more intense than this film. Not that it's not. It's very well-crafted film in terms of the filmmaking involved, the acting, but it depends if you're going to be able to go wrong with the story or not, especially with the way the film wraps up. So having said all that, there's a few things during the film I keep thinking back on. There's a moment where, the FBI is searching for LongLegs, and they've been looking for him for a very long time. And there's a scene where LongLegs goes into this hardware store, and he's messing with this young girl behind the counter working the cash register, and he's trying to get her to laugh, and she's like very put off by it, and she's like, what's that supposed to be? I don't know what you're doing there. And she yells for her dad, and she says, that creepy guy's here again. Can you come here? Meaning he's been in this store more than once. Now, if there's people being killed in this area for the last 30 years, 20 years, and this creepy ass dude keeps coming into your store, you think you might want to say, call the cops and say, you might want to look into this dude. Just maybe you want to call the cops and just say, you might want to check this dude out and see. But, there's a couple other little things that bug me. We won't go into this, review's already going long, but at the end of the day, I did enjoy it. I wasn't blown away by it. I really enjoyed the filmmaking, the acting. I'd have to see this again, probably at least one more time, maybe 2 more times to really know where I stand with it. But right now, the day after I've seen it, I would give this movie a 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 for LongLegs. Have you seen this movie yet? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Do you think the hype was a little too much? Leave that comment down below too. Were you freaked out by this movie? Maybe this totally worked for you, and that is totally, I get that too. Again, film is very subjective. I'm not here to tell you that if you think this is scary that you're not a true horror fan. I'm not here to tell you that at all because we're all scared by different things. I just think the hype for this one got a little out of hand, and I think it did the movie a huge disservice. Although our theater was pretty crowded, so people are definitely interested in this film, and it looks like it's going to do pretty well box office-wise. I hope it does. I always want horror to do well. But I definitely, if I had to compare, since I just saw Maxine last week, I liked Maxine more, honestly, as a film overall and as a narrative. That movie I enjoyed a lot more than LongLegs, but I do want to see this again and see where I stand on it. But yeah, 7 out of 10 for LongLegs. If you've seen it yet, leave me a comment. I'd greatly appreciate it. But until next time, bye.